Today, we're cracking open a classic book from over a century ago called Thought Vibration. Now, I know that sounds a little old school, but its core ideas are surprisingly relevant, and we're going to translate them into a simple, practical framework you can actually use right away.
So, does this sound familiar? You decide to make a change in your life. You take a few steps forward, you're feeling good, you've got that initial rush of momentum, and then, bam, it feels like some invisible force just yanks you right back to where you started. It can be so frustrating, like you're just stuck in a loop you can't break.
Well, according to the author of this book, William Walker Atkinson, this isn't some personal failure of willpower. It's not a sign that you're just not cut out for success. He argued it's a total misunderstanding of a fundamental principle. Your mind is constantly sending and receiving signals. He believed this was as real as any law of physics.
So in this explainer, we'll talk about that weird progress pullback effect. We'll get into what he called your mind's radio signal and the incredible momentum of habit. Then, we're going to tackle the real issue, the mixed signal problem, and walk through a super practical reset to help you finally move forward.
Okay, let's dive right into Atkinson's central idea, this concept of mental attunement. We're going to strip away all the mystical language and just translate this into a modern, practical framework. The key here isn't about forcing change. It's about understanding what frequency your mind is already tuned to.
So what on earth did he mean by vibration? Honestly, just think of it as your mind's dominant keynote or its default setting. This isn't some big cosmic mystery, it's just the product of your most common thoughts, your typical emotional tone, and what you subconsciously expect out of life. And that keynote, that default setting, acts like a filter for your entire experience.
Atkinson used a really clever analogy for his time, the Marconi wireless telegraph. He said a receiver could only pick up signals from a transmitter that was tuned to the exact same key. You know, to update that for today, let's just call it your personal Wi-Fi. Your phone only connects to the network it's attuned to, right? In the exact same way, your mind is primarily receptive to the kinds of thoughts, people, and opportunities that match its default keynote.
Now here is where it gets really interesting. This mental signal of yours, it isn't just a passive state. It actually gains force and momentum over time. Kind of like a small snowball rolling down a hill, your habitual thoughts gather mass and speed, creating this powerful, unseen force in your life.
And this is how that momentum gets built. It all starts with an active, conscious thought, a new goal or an idea you decide to focus on. Then, through repetition, that conscious focus starts to sink in, and it becomes a subconscious, passive habit that just runs on autopilot. This is the mechanism behind both our best routines and, yeah, our worst patterns too.
Atkinson had a great way of describing this. He said the mind has two functions. You've got the active mind, which is like the CEO. It's the part of you that makes conscious decisions and says, okay, let's make a change. But then you have the passive mind, which is like the factory floor. It doesn't think, it doesn't judge, it just carries out the orders it's been given from the past. Our habits are just the factory floor running programs the CEO designed a long, long time ago.
Okay, so if this whole mechanism is so straightforward, why do so many of us feel stuck? Well, the reason is what we can call the mixed signal problem. This is what happens when the CEO and the factory floor are working from two completely different blueprints. And that really brings us to the core conflict. Let me ask you this, and just be honest with yourself. Do you consciously want success, but deep down, almost secretly, you just expect things to go wrong? That's it. That's the internal friction that stalls our progress and keeps us feeling like we're being pulled back.
So here's that conflict in action. Your conscious desire sends out one signal, I want to be confident, but your subconscious belief, which has been built up from years of habit, sends out a totally conflicting one, I'm not good enough. Atkinson told this story about a man who was always complaining about his bad luck, constantly expecting things to go wrong for him, and guess what? They always did. He didn't realize he was a perfect example of this principle. His deep-seated expectation was a way more powerful signal than his wish.
So how do we fix this? How do we finally get our signals aligned? Okay, let's move from the theory to a tangible, practical solution you can apply, like right after this.
Here are some really common examples of how this mixed signal problem shows up. In our work, we might say, I want that promotion, but we secretly fear the responsibility. In relationships, we might desire a loving partner, but we fully expect to be disappointed, again. And with our habits, we might say, I want to be healthy, but subconsciously, we just believe, I know I'll just quit eventually. You see how the desire and the expectation are totally at odds?
All right, here's a simple 3-step reset. First, just relax.
Atkinson pointed out that mental strain and trying to force things actually scrambles the signal, so just let go of any physical tension. Second, observe your current mental state, but without judging it. You are not your thoughts, you are the one who is aware of them. And third, substitute. Don't fight the negative thought, that just gives it more energy. Instead, calmly and deliberately choose a single, better-feeling thought to focus on instead.
Now, the goal here isn't a one-time fix. It's about turning this little reset into a lasting practice. It's all about consciously and consistently choosing the keynote you want your mind to hold, until that new keynote becomes your new default setting.
So, let's just do a quick recap of the crucial points. Your habitual thoughts create a mental keynote, a default setting. Repetition builds momentum, making that keynote stronger and more automatic, for good or for bad. Feeling stuck usually comes from mixed signals, where your desire is fighting with your belief. And finally, the most empowering takeaway of all, you can consciously reset that keynote, one thought at a time.
So, I'll leave you with this question. What is the one dominant thought you can consciously choose today to begin setting a new keynote for your mind? In our next explainer, we're going to explore the secret of the will. You can find the full series right here on the channel. Thanks for joining me.